Okay, so part two of our discussion today has to do with the difference between connotations and denotations and the importance that these words play in poetry. So these terms should not be new to you. Connotation and denotation are probably terms that you have heard and discussed before in other English classes. So denotation, just remember all the D's. The denotation is the dictionary definition of the word, while the connotation is the emotional response attached to that particular word. So if you think back to reading A Rose for Emily, when it describes what's happening with the smell that surrounds Miss Emily's house, which we later found out was the decaying corpse of Homer Barron. And when it talks about that smell, Faulkner chose to use the word stench, not smell, because of the connotation that is associated with the word stench and the more negative and nastiness that comes along with it. He wouldn't use the term aroma, which also means smell. So as you can see, smell is kind of like the neutral or middle term, and then you have stench, which is more negatively connotated, and we have aroma, which is more positively connotated. You would use that to describe a nice smell, the aroma of the flowers, the perfumes, etc., whereas stench is more negative. So when you're thinking about using these and discussing their importance, it becomes very clear that choosing a very particular word that really gets into the emotion and describing and helps to describe that tone that you want to create, word choice becomes quite important. So, for writers, as I just mentioned, we're choosing our words very deliberately as writers, and especially for poetry, when you're using fewer words to create that meaning, word choice becomes quite important. And so this word choice does create that tone, which in turn creates the mood while you are reading it. And all of these things, especially that emotional connection with the word. And also, we need to think about word etymology a little bit, because if a poem was published in a certain time period, some words have changed meaning over time. So, what the word meant at the time of publishing may not be the same as what it means, especially connotatively, as we're reading it today. So, the precise choice of words becomes very important when discussing tone. So, if we look at just a couple examples, um, if you look at these groups of words, they all essentially have very similar denotative meanings. So for this first group, it's people who are in the process of learning, um, and making progress in that way. And we look at words here like student, apprentice, disciple, junior, learner, novice, scholar, and undergraduate. And if I were to ask you to just go through and denote these as positively connotated, negatively connotated, or more neutral, you could go through and do that. And some of these are going to differ just by the way that you associate with the word. But student and learner may be more neutral. Novice might be something that is more negative. Disciple might be seen as something more negative. I don't know what that is. Negative. Being someone who just follows along. Junior might be seen as more negative. Apprentice, scholar, undergraduate, maybe more positive. Okay, same thing with the next group, dealing with a weight that is below the suggested BMI. So skinny, bony, angular, emaciated, gaunt, malnourished, scrawny, slender, thin, anorexic. So here, clearly we have some more negatively connotated words with the malnourished and the emaciated and the anorexic. And then we have things like slender and skinny, that might be seen as more positive. Bony might, again, maybe negative, maybe neutral. It just depends on how you look at things. Thin, maybe more positive. If someone tells you you're thin, that's a good thing. Whatever. So as you can see, these words, although they essentially mean denotatively very similar things, their connotations can be quite different. Again, just some more groups of words to take a look at. vacation, break, fiesta, furlough, holiday, intermission, layoff, recess, respite, sabbatical. So we have more positive things here like a vacation, a fiesta, a holiday. We see break and intermission, and maybe respite being more neutral, recess being positive, whereas layoff and furlough or more negative. Sabbatical, kind of neutral. Sabbatical is when someone takes time off to do some research. So it is more positive than, say, a layoff or a furlough. And then we see group 4, busy, active, diligent, employed, occupied, persevering, unavailable. So all having to do with your time. Busy is an interesting one. Depends on how you view being busy. Could be positive, could be more negative, could be right there in the middle. Being employed, usually a more positive thing. Unavailable could be a more negative thing. So again, looking at how these how these words are affecting the meaning of what we're saying, even though they're all very similar, and then choosing the appropriate words to create the tone, to create the meaning that is important for the overall meaning and tone of the poem or writing that you or the author are creating. So with that, you are just going to be working on a little activity today. The activity is, well, let me find my notes. My apologies. Today's activity is worth 30 points, plus goes towards those 50 participation points that you get every week. But if you go over to the classwork section of Classroom, you'll find more details about this activity. Essentially, I'm going to be linking 2 poems there for you, Fire and Ice by Robert Frost and The Minefield by Diane Thiel. And what I want you to do is to read through both of these poems more than once, and then I want you to choose 3 words that stand out to you from each poem, okay? So choose 3 words that seem to be interesting or stand out in some way. You're going to define each word, like a dictionary definition. You're going to talk about the connotation of the word. You can focus on specifically in the poem or just general in the world, how the emotions are attached to that word, or the way people react to that word. And then just a very brief explanation as to how and why each word, not work, each word is important to the overall meaning and tone of that particular poem. Okay. Now, all of these activities, in the end of all of this, you're going to be, instead of writing an essay, you are going to be conducting a pretty in-depth poetry analysis. And so all of these activities are going to be included in that analysis. You're going to be mapping tone, you're going to be choosing words and talking about their connotation and their importance. So all of these things are leading up to that larger major assignment that'll be coming, I believe, at the end of the week. Yes, at the end of this week. So we have a few more things to go through, and then that'll be a Thursday, Friday thing. Okay. So that's kind of how all of this is building upon each other. All right. So, like I said, this is explained in detail and posted to classwork in Classroom. And that is all I have for you today. We'll pick up tomorrow talking about imagery and the importance of these words, not only creating a tone, but then coming together to create an image in writing as well. See you then. Have a great day.